everybody. Welcome to episode 91 of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who's with me tonight?
Julian Titus, thanking fuck for Simon Templeman.
Yeah, just me and Julian tonight coming back for our fourth Legacy of Kain game on this series. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, Mike is actually in the hospital right now due to sinusitis or something he said. And the way he put it, his body is fighting him, trying to make sure he didn't have to play this game. Well, it first started off, he had migraines when he first started playing it. He had a bloody nose that kept him from playing it. And he's like, okay, I'm going to try to play. He's like, man, this game sucks, so I'm going to try to play it. And then next thing you know, he ends up getting admitted in the hospital because of the sinus infection and things. And he's like, it's his body telling me he just can't play this game for the show. So
Games My Mom Found, playing games to save your life.
Did not. So that's why he's not here today. But he will be back next week in the next episode that you guys hear. That's already been pre-recorded.
Well,
so
feel better soon. That's rough.
He is. He was supposed to come home today at the time of this recording, but I don't know if he is. So hopefully tomorrow. It's been like 3 days already, so I know he's ready.
Yeah.
But he's never playing this game again. I know that.
Yeah, neither am I. But we'll get to that. Spoilers.
And I should say there will be spoilers for the Legacy of Kain series, Soul Reaver 1, Soul Reaver 2, Blood Omen 1, stuff that actually matters. And there will be spoilers for Blood Omen 2, but that don't matter. Because the story don't count.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have to spoil much of the other games because this is so disconnected in a frustrating way. I guess there's one pretty big thing when, like, right towards the end of the game where it's like, oh, here we go. This is stuff that I recognize.
Well, plus where the game's set, because this game is set in between. It's after Blood Omen 1, but it's a time paradox, Snake, because of what happens in the end of Soul Reaver 2. That why this game is happening.
Well, yeah, and I should preface this with saying that I am on record as hating video game prequels with a passion, mainly because when you do a prequel to an existing series, you can't really take away the gameplay advancements of the previous sequels because that's not how video games work. So what you end up having is a game where it takes place before what you've seen, but the gameplay is actually more advanced than what you've seen, and that always bugs me. This is actually how I think a prequel should be done. Like, I think it's a very interesting. Like the idea of, okay, we got to see Kain as a fledgling vampire in his first game, and then the next time we saw him, he was a vampire lord, like 1,000 years later. The idea of filling in some of those gaps and seeing his rise to power is actually a really awesome idea. And even the way that they explain, like, why he doesn't have as much power as he did, like that stuff is all cool. So this game is very frustrating to me because there are awesome ideas here, and there's inklings of a deeper, better game that just don't come to fruition. But yeah, we'll definitely delve into it.
And before I get too far, I can't remember if I said we're playing Blood Omen 2 Legacy of Kain Series. Yes. That's the way that they named this game for some reason. Yeah. And it came out in 2002, developed by Crystal Dynamics and published by Eidos.
But not that Crystal Dynamics, as I found out.
There is a thing I had mentioned that I found out thanks to a YouTuber. Apparently, when they made this game, they weren't originally supposed to make this game. They were making a sequel to that wonderful, classic 1992 Sega Genesis game, Chakan, the Forever Man.
This was that?
Yes, and it was also this and something, a failed IP that never got off the ground called Siren. They took those two games, put them together to make Blood Omen 2 to save some of the parts.
Oh, I'm even more pissed now because I was chomping at the bit for that Chakan sequel on the Dreamcast. Like, I loved the Genesis game, and like the stuff that they were showing in like Die Hard Game Fan magazine of Chakan 2, I was like, this is going to be the greatest thing. Like, that was one of the things that sold me on a Dreamcast. And oh man, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's this game.
Man.
Now you know what happened to it.
Man.
And I was just surprised when I heard Chakan the Forever Man is actually going to get a sequel. I've never played it though, so I can't say a whole lot. I just know I picked it up. I've tried it throughout the years, never got past the first level, and just moved on.
It's one of those games that's like needlessly difficult, and it feels weird in that way that like the two Genesis X-Men games feel weird, where you don't really feel like you're actually like hitting anything when you hit them. Like there's not a lot of like rapport when you do damage to enemies, and the platforming is really weird, but it had a look and it had a style and the character was really cool. And even to this day, I'm like, they should bring back Chakan. Like there's something there that you can do something with, even if the actual like only game is just kind of middling.
Yeah, I thought that was funny when I heard that's what happened. I was like, oh, I'm not expecting that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing that I saw in doing a little bit of research is that the team that worked on Blood Omen 2, not only had none of them worked on any of the previous games, but they also didn't have any dialogue between the Soul Reaver 2 team. And these games were apparently being produced in tandem. And so they weren't sharing any tech. They weren't sharing any story ideas. And it really shows. And it's funny, Mike, because leading up to this, like I was even when on the previous, like the Soul Reaver 2 episode, I was talking about how I'm not looking forward to this. Like I remember this being a really bad
Yep.
game. It wasn't as bad as I remember it being. It's one of those things where like it you know, with a lot of games you tend to like not remember the bad stuff and the games get better over time, where this was the opposite effect, where all that I remembered about this game was like how glitchy it was and how like I barely beat the last boss because it almost broke on me.
So that wasn't okay. I thought maybe that was my version that I was playing.
No,
Okay.
this game is glitchy as fuck, and we'll talk about it because I definitely had some issues here. But so yeah, it wasn't as bad as I remembered. It was a situation where I was like, this came out after Soul Reaver 2, so why does it look worse? And the design is worse, and also, and so that's the thing. And when they show like the opening cinematic, like before you even press start, I was like, oh no, oh, this is all coming back to me now. Oh, this is going to be terrible. But then when Kain wakes up and Simon Templeton starts talking, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this will be okay because it still sounds like Kain. But the dialogue is nowhere near the level of the previous games. Like Simon Templeton is doing his best, but all the dialogue is just so stilted and weak compared to the other stuff that they got to do. It just feels like a shadow of the series.
Yeah, it's not as. I mean, he still carries it because he's such a good voice actor. But
yeah,
the same thing. I noticed that too. Like it doesn't have any of that epic story writing. He's not very Shakespearean. It's just kind of. I mean, Kain's just an asshole for the most part, how it feels, which is Kain, I guess. But it doesn't have that same like vibe that the other one had that makes it so good. It doesn't. I mean, hell, I did not enjoy the first Blood Omen one. That is a much better game, maybe. I mean, I didn't hate this game. Like I had fun at parts. Like most of this game, just your regular third person action beat 'em up style game. But the combat, like at least for me, because you can choose the blocking to be either you hold down the button or you tap the button to block right before they hit. I held it down because I chose the easier option always, because that's me. And it wasn't. I mean, a lot of it just block. Oh, look, an opening hit. Oh, he blocked. He blocked me. Okay. I mean, and it's just all that for 12 hours.
Right. But that's the thing is that because I remembered enjoying the combat, and I still enjoyed the combat here. I do think that it's more interesting if you're doing the timed blocking. And there's a really good chunkiness to the combat where like the blocks feel really like, oh, I really blocked that. And then, when you're swinging your swords, like it feels really good and chunky. The only problem is that the combat in the first 10 minutes of the game is the combat in the last 10 minutes of the game. Like even as Kain gets more powerful, like it doesn't feel like it. The abilities that you get don't really affect combat all that much. Three do, but kind of in similar ways. It's really just like, okay, every once in a while you can do a more powerful hit, right? And it's like, okay, that's fine. But really, and I was thinking about this because like I don't like to compare games of this age to stuff today, right? That's really not fair. Like I really like to look at things in context, and definitely,
baby.
Yeah, and definitely at the time, like that combat was like you hadn't seen that yet, right? And I do think the combat is far better than Soul Reaver 1 and 2. The only problem is that it's so shallow. And I was thinking, if you did this today, like what you do is you have the lock on go on to like the R3 or L3 button. Like you just click that in to like lock on, and then you actually move the blocking to L1 and R1. So it's a little bit more timing based, like you're having to block on each side, but make it also more rewarding. Like that's the only thing is that, it would be cool if you were doing the active block, like you got more bonuses to maybe damage and stuff like that instead of holding the block button down, like, and maybe give the option from default, like you can just hold it if you want to like block everything and not worry about it. But if you want to like do the timing thing, then you're actually going to get a reward for it if you're successful. And then also just add like more attacks, right? Like a light and a heavy attack.
Yeah, it needed a little more.
Yeah,
and one combo.
And then also, this completely took out like the RPG elements of the original Blood Omen. So you don't have items to use. You don't have different equipment that affects your stats. You don't have, you do get different weapons off of enemies, but you don't have any magic spells really. You do, but not necessarily combat ones.
Well, you have 3 magic spells. You have the one that is like Berserk, I guess. You have Berserk Rage, which you do more damage if you hit the button as your meter fills. But the only one that really I use near the end of the game, you get a fire spell where the game became the last 3 chapters. It was block. Oh, you filled up my meter. Okay, burn, and then
right, and just kill them in one shot.
But every time you can probably relate to this. Every time I burn somebody, I just think of fire. Every time. That's the top of my head every time I burn somebody. I love that Final Fantasy 6 quote from the Imperial Guard. That was probably badly translated, but I don't care. I still love that. Or whenever that scene's always stuck with me, but that's not why we're here. But I did enjoy the combat. Like if you cut maybe 4 chapters out of this game and just cut out some of the fact, because 2002, I feel like I played a lot of 2002 games recently because of this show, like Ratchet and Clank and Eternal Darkness and something else from 2002, and Bounty Hunter, where the game just feel like they had to put in extra things because if this game didn't have a certain clock time, people wouldn't want to play it. It wouldn't be worth the money, and that's how this game feels. Because I didn't hate the combat, I enjoyed it, but after a while, I was just getting tired of the combat. I was just getting tired of the game, and I was getting tired of hitting levers every day.
Let's talk about the level design, because I think that is the game's weakest thing by far. I don't know. I lost track of how many times during this playthrough that I said, why does this exist? Why would anyone build this? Why would you do it this way? Because a lot of this game is set in, and it's an interesting version of Nosgoth. It's like this, Industrial Revolution era, technology. And it's okay. And then also there's this rudimentary form of electricity, but they call it glyph magic. And it's all right, that's kind of an interesting concept for Nosgoth. But so much of it involves there's so many times in this game, Mike, where a gate closes in front of you, but the lever is right next to you. And so it's literally just there to impede your progress for a few seconds. And it's why did you do that? Oh, right, because you needed me to take a little bit more time here. Or, and all of the puzzles are literally just, how do I get through this room, right? And it started to feel like Portal, but in a bad way, where it was I walked into another room, and now I've got to do a bunch of bullshit just to get into the next room. And we'll get to it later, but the game broke me at some point, and so I ended up watching a Let's Play of the last bit of the game. And I remembered seeing a cutscene where they said, oh, well, you got to get to this building. And then I fast forwarded through almost half an hour of gameplay. And when I stopped for the next cutscene, I was like, he's just fucking getting to that building now? That half hour was just him trying to get to that one fucking building? And that's this game. But it's just it's funny because it's not a long game. It's only about 9 hours long, but it feels too long. And I know you guys haven't covered this yet, but I just recently played through the first 3 Uncharted games because I'd never played them before.
Okay, Uncharted 1 has that too.
They all do. Those games are 6 hours long, but they feel way longer because they feel so padded, even though they're only 6 hours long. And that's an amazing feat to be a short game and still feel too long. And that's what Blood Omen 2 is.
It had its moments. I like the fact that every enemy you kill, you can then drain their blood to heal you, which is cool. And I wasn't crazy about the aspect of, as you play through this game, you always have a unseen timer where after X amount of time passes, Kain loses some health, no matter what. I thought that
that's the whole series, though. Like Raziel loses soul power and Kain loses blood in the first game. So that's actually one of the few things that's consistent with the series.
I forgot that Raziel had that problem, too. I guess because in Soul Reaver, I'm constantly just sucking up souls. I don't even pay attention to it.
Right.
Plus, I didn't play Soul Reaver 2 very well because the game glitched the hell out of me. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
This game, I thought it was just because I was playing this on the emulator. I bought this on Steam, but I like save states. I never would have gotten through this game without save states. So I was playing on the emulator, and every so often it would slow down where everything was laggy. And I thought it was just my emulator, but now you got me questioning whether it was this game or not.
Okay, so here's the thing. I am not one of those frame rate people.
We're talking real laggy. We're talking you just see you're a ding ding. It was, you could tell it was way slow.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't care about 60 frames per second. I can't tell when a game dips below 30 most of the time. It's not a thing. Here, I could definitely tell. Oh, this is a really bad frame rate. Like it's consistently terrible. So no, that was not the emulated version. That is just the game, and the game is just full of glitches. And I didn't realize it in 2002. So in 2002, like, I was disappointed in it, but I did finish it, and I was like, well, it's still a Legacy of Kain game, and I did like the combat, so whatever. But looking at it in hindsight now, and especially comparing it to Soul Reaver 2, which came out so quickly together, this game does not feel finished. And the deeper you get into the game, the less finished and polished it feels. And it almost starts to feel like it's destabilizing around you and almost can't hold itself together long enough to end.
Well, one thing that I do think was interesting that I think we mentioned a little bit how it was a prequel. Like, I like the fact that, like, when the game starts off, you have Kain with his army.
Yes.
And then he fails. He has a Soul Reaver. He fails against fighting the Seraphan Lord, in quotations, because it turns out he's an alien, which was like, what?
Sort of like I mean, alien / I think really what they were getting at was, like, they weren't from another planet as much as they were from, like, another reality. I think they're interdimensional beings.
Okay, but they're never in this. They're not in the Soul Reaver series, and they're not in Defiance. Like, they only exist in this one game, and then they go away.
Well,
I don't think the Hylians are in anything else.
I mean, you could make the argument that they were the other race that was fighting against the first version of the vampires. That they were supposed to be. Yeah,
okay,
because
never mind then.
You know the ones that, because there's you do get the line later where the Hildens, which we'll find out they're called, they were the ones responsible for adding the curse to the vampires of not being able to go into the sunlight and their weaknesses and stuff like that. So that is the one big thing that ties them into each other. I actually think that stuff is pretty cool. And there, like I said, there's a lot of stuff in here that's really cool. It's just missing a lot of the soul of the series. No pun intended.
That makes sense, though. You made me a little more interested now that, okay, they are introduced in Blood Omen Legacy of Kain as the unspoken and the dark entity.
Right. And then in Soul Reaver, when Raziel is seeing these like images of this angelic race being cast down by another race that he doesn't recognize, and then he finds out that the angelic looking race is actually what vampires were. That's the Hildens. So that stuff is actually pretty neat. And it's really quick, but right before you get to the final boss, you get to see, like, some etchings on these like floating slabs, and you get to see what the Hildens used to look like, sort of like how Janos Audrin is an image of what vampires used to look like. So you can see that these are both, like, races that have fallen and mutated over time, and they used to be much more divine creatures.
Okay.
So that stuff is actually really neat. It's just, it doesn't do a great job of telling it. And Mike, fucking hate the character designs in this game.
Oh, they're bad.
Kain looks awful. And then, like, all of the vampires look really bad. And when you beat the game, like, they show, like, a lot of the concept art during the credits, and it looks like the worst deviant art shit. Like, it looks amateurish to me in a way that other games of the time do not. And man, like, all of the, like, vampire generals that you fight as bosses are just like the most phoned in shit. They even messed up Vorador. Like, he looks weird. He looks like some sort of weird reptile now with these, like, bug eyes.
Vorador died in Blood Omen 1, right?
No, he
died at some point, because I know in the things I was watching, they mentioned how he had died, but they brought him back. They resurrect him like they resurrect Kain in this game. But maybe
it's timey-wimey stuff. Like, I remember seeing Vorador's severed head, but I don't remember if that was in Soul Reaver 2 or if that was in Blood Omen 1.
I forgot the end of Blood Omen where you start jumping through time because of Mobius, and I played Soul Reaver 1 and 2, but I don't remember a whole lot.
And none of that stuff is here. Like, I was thinking, this is because now that Soul Reaver 2 is fresh in my mind. Well, I mean, I guess it would have been back then too, because I played these when they came out. So I don't know why I didn't think this at the time, but I was realizing, wait, this time period, isn't this around the time when Raziel, like, travels to go talk to Janos Audrin? And if so, like, it'd be really cool if you either ran into Mobius or Raziel, even if you don't talk to him, but just, like, see him. Like, wouldn't that be cool? But no, because these games weren't related in really any way other than, you do see Janos Audrin, and he is still voiced by René Auberjonois, but that's really it.
To answer your question, Vorador's head was in Blood Omen 1 in near the last part when you're going through the timey-wimey stuff.
Okay, and I think that's That's like an
Vorador
ultimate thing. Yeah, like you stop that from happening.
Okay, you talked to him in Soul Reaver 2 before the Blood Omen era. Awesome.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that really creates the time paradox is the fact that with the Soul Reaver that Kain has in the beginning of this game before he loses it in the first cutscene doesn't have Raziel inside of it because in Soul Reaver 2 he realized that it was all a trap or something.
Right.
Is the whole like that's the time paradox. But at the same time, the more as I was playing through the game, I was realizing like this could have easily, like you were saying before, this could have easily have fit in between the two games, and still I feel like it'd still be canon that Kain was, trying to amass an army and that people turned on him and he fought and and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would play a Blood Omen 3, which is just a continuation of this, where it's just more talking about, now that Kain has kind of come back into power, now he needs to like take over Nosgoth. Like, I would love to play that story. I think that would be really neat.
Just don't pull a Metroid and take away all of his abilities when the game starts off, and I'd be okay.
Yeah, like you start him from a place of power, and then you get to grow him from there. Like maybe you wouldn't necessarily have like maybe the same spells because I mean those spells were kind of lame.
Hey,
but like
besides the fire, yes.
Yeah, like by default, let him have like the mind control and the mist form because those are kind of Kain's staples anyway. And that's the thing also is like the stealth gameplay. I mean, you got to remember this is 2002, so like we've only really had like Metal Gear Solid 1, Tenchu. I think Thief hadn't even come out yet on the PC, so stealth gameplay was still pretty rudimentary. So the stealth in here is not good. And I also don't like the fact that you can only do it when there's mist around, and usually when there's mist around, you can really only stealth kill one dude. But I still never got tired of the stealth kills. So it's just like, imagine if the game was built around stealth and you're having to actually, because you really don't get penalized for coming out as being a vampire, right? Like people run away and then the Seraphim come if any are nearby, and that's about it. And then you just kill them really easily. But what if the game was built more around, no, like I'm weak and I need to like skulk in the shadows and pick off my enemies strategically. And if somebody sees me doing vampire shit, I better kill them because they're going to alert like other people to my vampire shit. I would love to play that game.
It had moments like you're talking about the stealth. I didn't use the stealth enough because I just wasn't looking down at the ground. I guess I would see the mist, but it wouldn't really click. I would just run over and start fighting the guy anyway.
Yeah, I would oftentimes notice it after the fact. It was like, oh, that could have saved me a little bit of time.
They set it up like it's only in particular spots though where they have the mist, and sometimes it'll be a spot where you might have 2 or 3 guys where they want you to use the mist, and I would just run in and just start fighting because everyone fights one at a time anyway, so it doesn't really matter. For the
most part, there's some enemies who will use like their like unblockables from behind, and then when you get to those like the demon bugs, I guess they must be animals from the Hilden realm, but when you get to them about halfway through the game, they will definitely like do their acid attack from behind on you, and that's not cool. That's not fun. I fought most enemies in this game, but when it came to those bugs, I would skip them at one point. I just stopped. One thing that made me like, I normally don't kill everything in a game. I'll skip a lot of stuff, but in this game, for about 80% of the game, I was killing every peasant, every guy I saw, because as you suck people's blood, which is cool at first, but when you've seen that animation over hundreds of times, and it starts taking longer as you get farther in the game, you get tired of it, seeing him drain the blood from a guy 5 feet away, then he has to wipe his mouth with his arm. I didn't get tired of it. I really like it. I don't like the fact that the stronger enemies have way more blood and it takes a lot longer. I wish it was just like the same length of time, but you just got more blood.
Yeah, that's how it should have been.
Yeah.
I liked it, but it goes too long for me, especially when I was in a rush. But the fact that by sucking people's blood, you're able to increase your overall health as the game progresses, that was super cool to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only reason I did it, because I got something out of it.
I would typically like leave the villagers alone unless they saw me doing vampire shit and then they had to die. And then also if it was somebody who like, wouldn't let me through because I needed a password. Once I got the password, I'd be like, okay, fuck you. And then I would kill them and drink their blood and then move on.
that did always feel good when somebody wouldn't let you read, like they wouldn't let you see something like, well, you're dead now. Like it's over. You wouldn't open this door for me. I'm killing you the moment I get through this door.
Also, just as a fanboy of the series, I love the fact that the few times that you do see people chained to the walls, they have the same sound clips from the first game. So it's like, oh, please help me, kind sir. It's like, oh, that's cool. I'm glad that's here.
When I heard that, I just started laughing. I'm like, really? Like they brought this. I mean, I'm cool they brought it back. The one thing they brought back, but I was just like, okay, not what I expected, but it was cool. And it was cool to see. It's not often. It's only like less than maybe 5 times you see people chained to a wall.
Yeah.
It wasn't often, but it was enough. Like, it was still a cool touch to have it in this game.
Yeah.
The bosses, like, before we played this game for the show and I looked up things about this game, I thought the bosses would be more different. I didn't realize they were all just going to be vampires in the same, like, shape and form as you kind of thing, where they're just, they're the same size and they just have different random parts of the fight, but they all have a gimmick to the fight. Like, the first guy you fight is all about, you have to hide in the mist and then hit a switch so he burns the furnace he's standing on.
Yeah.
Which, stupid. But it was... I didn't hate any of the fight. I didn't enjoy any of them, but I didn't hate them.
I enjoy some puzzle bosses, right? Like, it's just that these particular puzzle bosses, they're very janky, like, as the whole game is. Like when you're trying to get them to do the thing, a lot of times it's really hard to get them to do the thing just because of the way the game moves. And it makes sense in the overall canon of Legacy of Kain why the vampires you fight would be like the same size and shape as Kain, because they have not had all of that time to mutate the way that they have by the time you get to the Soul Reaver era. But it would have been cool if, like, not all the bosses were vampires, right? Like, I guess you fight the Seraphan Lord at the end, but other than that, it's like, why wasn't there a tougher Seraphan captain?
There should have been, like, the whole idea, and every boss you fight was supposed to be someone that betrayed him back in the day, 300 years ago before he was killed, and then they resurrected him.
200.
Okay. That was kind of cool, and then that's how you get your abilities too. But the abilities really just felt like puzzle solvers, like the charm ability I used all the time, just to charm a guy to hit a switch, or charm a guy to pull a lever, or charm a guy to turn a wheel. Like, that's all it was for. It was never for any actual reason other than you have to go turn something in a room I can't get into.
Yeah. And, and that's how they used it in Blood Omen 1. But, how cool it would have been if, like, you could upgrade these abilities and eventually you could charm a guard and have him, like, start to fight on your side, or stuff like that.
Didn't work.
No, but imagine if you could. Like, there's a lot of things here where it's like, okay, you've got the basics, now expand upon them. Oh, you didn't expand upon them. Okay, it's just basic.
And the puzzles never, like, they do have a couple box pushing puzzles, which again reminded me of Soul Reaver, but they're even done worse because you can only push it the one direction that you're facing. You can't move it around. You have to move around to push a different direction, which I thought was unnecessary.
I was so mad, Mike, because I was like, they fixed this in Soul Reaver 1. That was on the PlayStation 1. You didn't look at the PlayStation 1 game before you made your game?
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. And I know we've both been kind of shitting on this game. I did have fun for a while. But one thing that, as I've been watching videos as we've been talking, where I said before how Chachan the Forever Man played a part of, of making this game, that internal prison level, like especially the part where you're climbing up like the derelict building that's falling apart in this blue inner dimension, you go through a portal. It looks like that was ripped out right of Forever Man.
Right, and consequently is actually the most interesting level, I think, in the whole game. Both from design and just conceptually, like the idea of, this is a prison where we put the really bad people, and it's so that they could be tormented forever. Like, we actually built hell. Like, that's a really interesting concept to me.
It's a cool level where you see, like, people just being tortured and having, like, they're like, the cell will drop out and somebody will come and just kill them. Like, it was just, and then they, because they're damned for all eternity. It was a cool level. Even the fight, even the enemies you fight, like these guardians, were fun to fight because they can't block as much.
Right. The bummer is that you can't grab their scythe and use them as weapons. I was like, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, because you get to grab every guy's weapon in this game besides the scythe for some reason. Weapons do break in this game, which we haven't mentioned yet, but it isn't terrible. Like, I tried Breath of the Wild and I couldn't get into it because my weapons kept breaking. But in this game, you're still can fight without your weapons. You're not immobile. You still have your claws. It takes more hits, yes, but you're not. You can still do something.
And here, yeah, like Breath of the Wild actually should have looked at this game if they wanted to do weapon degradation right, because the weapons last a good long time, and it actually makes sense that they would degrade since you're actively using them to block with that active block system. So it makes sense. And the cool thing is that, until you get towards the end of the game when you're fighting a lot of unarmed enemies, most of the time, like the second that your weapon breaks, you can grab another one right away. And a lot of times I was like, my weapon is fine, but this is a better weapon, so I'm just going to grab this anyway. and just
I thought the weapons are cool. Like I even enjoy how this game kind of progresses. Like you start off where you're escaping a city, and then like midway through the game, you get to a part where you change your outfit. And now you're out in the hills in the valley somewhere fighting bandits. Like the enemies never really change a whole lot. Their style's still the same, but they look a little different. They fight a little different. I liked it. Like I enjoyed some of like the different stuff you fight, and I didn't mind the way everything looks. Kind of what is it like? Kind of goth, like goth steampunk in a way, maybe. I think
it's like Industrial Revolution era goth, and like I said, that's an interesting take on Nosgoth. It kind of reminds me of Fable 3, where you got to see like a much more modern version of Albion. And that's a really cool take on places that you haven't been to Meridian before, but even so, like you've been to a large chunk of Nosgoth at this point in the previous 3 games. So it's interesting to see, now they have like a form of technology that we recognize, right? Like it's not just, peasants living in like regular village type places.
It was cool. I like, and the whole idea that why everything's all Industrial Revolution is because of the Haydn, I think they're called, right?
Yeah, and they're glyph magic, which it's electricity, guys. Like that's really what it is.
I didn't think about that until you mentioned it during this recording, but you are right. It's just electricity. But I thought that was cool. I mean, most of this game takes place in the one city too, which I thought was kind of interesting to me. It didn't bother me. Like, yes, it's not an open world game like Soul Reaver 1 and 2 are sort of, but I was okay with what it was. Like, I still had fun. I mean, yes, you finish a mission, you can't go back to that area, you're done, but I didn't care. Like, that was fine with me. I didn't have a problem with that concept.
Oh, I actively miss the concept of level-based game design. I think that was fine. The only thing that I'm really missing from like the Blood Omen 1 formula is the lack of like the RPG elements with the, equipable gear and usable items and spells and stuff like that.
That would have been nice.
Yeah, like that would have like been probably enough for me to overlook some of the other gameplay issues.
I mean, at least I'm glad to know that the glitching wasn't my emulator, because I really thought, because I played the GameCube version of this game for no other reason than my computer doesn't get as hot when I play GameCube than if I play PS2 or PC. And so that's the only reason I played the GameCube version. And I was worried that it was my emulator chugging along, having a hard time rendering the game. But I'm glad to know now you tell me, like, no, it's just the game.
That and feel better. I don't like. I was playing an original PlayStation 2 disc on a PlayStation 2 Slim, and granted, I don't know. This was like a used PlayStation 2 that I bought. It's not like my original one or anything, so I don't know how it was taken care of. And so I don't know if this is a problem with my PlayStation 2, but I noticed it was like constantly loading very quickly, and I don't know if that's an issue of the game or if that's an issue with my PlayStation, because I was also having some definite like DualShock issues that is definitely my controller. But I will say, and so again, I don't know if this was my system or if this was the game. I'm inclined to think that it was my system, but there was so much audio missing, right? Like
that's the game.
Okay, because like
I got tons of comments, way more than I ever expected for this game, and a lot of people did mention audio issues.
Okay, yeah, that because there were parts where, especially when you would beat a boss and you would like absorb his ability, and I was like, there's supposed to be something here, right? Like this isn't supposed to be silent, right? Why would you make it silent? And there's it's just there like I definitely dropped audio a lot, and then also like the boss enemies would like repeat their dialogue constantly, and I don't think that's a glitch. I think that's just because they didn't take the time to record more lines of dialogue for these very short encounters.
Well, this game was rushed too. I mean, like one reason, like you had mentioned earlier, how like why do they release this so quickly? Because at least the way that the YouTuber was putting it, they were trying to do yearly titles, and they just had Soul Reaver 2 not so long ago, or I think they had Soul Reaver 1. They were releasing Soul Reaver 2, and it was they were excited for it. So like we're gonna put another game out the next year, so we keep this going, which didn't last. I'm pretty sure Defiance is not 2003.
It might, it's either it might be, but 2004 sounds more correct to me. But even so, like Blood Omen 2 came out 6 months after Soul Reaver 2. Like at least give it the full 12. Like yeah, I think with at least even 6 months more of development time, this could have been a much better game. But it needed, I'm not a game designer, but I've definitely followed the industry for a long time. And
2003.
Okay, yeah. So I don't want to jump ahead, but like Legacy of Kain Defiance is a night and day difference from Soul Reaver 2 and Blood Omen 2.
Yeah, and that was another thing I noticed, like, with this game, that the puzzles were, like, Star Wars 2, from what I saw when I watched my YouTube video, because I couldn't get it to run, the puzzles looked very complex and interesting, and it was not as much combat, where this game is all about combat, and it had puzzles that were just there to impede your progress.
Yeah, the puzzles feel like in the design document, they were like, oh, this game is going to be like 4 hours long. What do we do? And they're like, we need to put in some puzzles. Okay, well, what do we do? And it was like, well, what if you have to like get around the room somehow? Like with switches and levers? Yeah, exactly. Let's put in a lot of switches and levers. And I will tell you that I stopped halfway through this game for a couple reasons. One is that once the bug enemies came out, I actually had to switch to the easier block method because they were like, I think I died on them like 4 or 5 times in a row.
They're not as easy to tell.
They're not. And they don't open up as much. Like usually after you block an enemy's like round of attacks, you can usually attack back. But that doesn't happen as often with the bugs. And then also, I'll tell you the exact puzzle that did it to me, Mike. You had to reroute power from one building to another. And the power runs very slowly through these pipes. And you have to use these spigots to route it. So I did it once and then realized that I had done it the wrong way. I was like, okay, let me do it again. I understand what I have to do now. So I went ahead and I did it. And then I hit the little valve thing to kick it over. And I immediately jumped over to the next building to wait for the energy. And I sit there and I sit there and I sit there. And it doesn't happen. I'm like, what happened? And then I realized that the valve actually will automatically rotate back. It's a timing thing.
Yep.
Again, why would you build it this way? Like that serves no functional purpose in real life whatsoever. And I was like, okay, let me do this again. So I did it again. And so I get it routed from the first building and it's coming towards the second building. And there's another valve that you have to turn. And I'm waiting for the energy to come. I turn the valve. And I was too late, and the energy stopped right there. And I was like, fuck this game. I'm done. Like, because I was like halfway through it, and this was on the day before we recorded. I still had like 4 or 5 more hours to play, and I was like, nope, like, that's it. I beat it before in 2002. I'll just like refresh my memory with a Let's Play, because fuck this.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like, it gets worse than that. I want to say there's another one like that later on that you have to hit like 5 different switches to make it work.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the only thing.
And literally only because they need you to take the time, right? Like and that's the thing with a lot of the levels that I meant to get to earlier. Everything feels weirdly sized. Like you feel like kind of tiny in this world because all of the rooms are massive and empty. And I was just walking through and it's like, why does this building look like this? Like no one would actually live here. And I know that, that may be ascribing like some 2020 design mentality to these levels, but It just looks weird. And it's this weird, like quasi, like, not that it has to be like a real life looking thing, right? Like we've all played like 16-bit and 8-bit games that take place ostensibly in the real world, but there's like floating platforms and nothing makes sense. It's all abstract. But as you get further into like the 3D era, you want things to have some sort of logical sense and look right, and nothing in Omen 2 looks right. Like it doesn't make any sense. And especially when you throw the puzzles in there, like I said, every time I was like, why did I have to do that?
They're really stupid puzzles. I mean, they're only there to just kill time, and that's what sucks. And you can feel it. It doesn't ever feel like you're doing anything fun, or you're just trying to make the game longer, so that way it doesn't get a bad review.
Yeah. I will say, because this factors into a lot of the traversal, I really love the jump spell. I thought that was really cool. I actually used it a lot to open up combat, and I just love the animation of it and everything. Like if they ever did like another Legacy of Kain game, because I don't believe he has that ability in Defiance, but I just thought that was a really cool touch, and you could do more with that. And I never got bored of having to jump. The only problem is that like it's very finicky on when you're actually able to jump to the platform that's clearly where you need to go. You kind of fiddle with it a little bit to get it there, but I still really enjoyed it.
I didn't like the jump because it takes too long to line up, which is on purpose. I felt that there are times we have to make a jump and they put an enemy right there you have to kill because you can't make this jump otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still cool. If it was faster, I would have liked it a lot more.
Yeah.
I do want to, like, as this game progresses, like, it does have, like, a story that goes through where you're trying to stop some device. I mean, your whole point is you're trying to stop the Seraphim. Like, that's pretty much the whole point of the entire game, is to get revenge for what they did to you 200 years ago.
Right.
And for those that don't know, the Seraphan is what Razdiel was, spoiler alert, before Soul Reaver 1 happened.
Right, and they're also an ancient order of knights dedicated to eradicating vampires. Like they're even around before Blood Omen like 1 starts. Like that's where you get Malik, one of the first bosses from Blood Omen 1, and they're also part of the Guardians of the Pillars of Nosgoth, which at this point are destroyed. But so they factor in heavily to the entire series.
Okay,
but it's interesting.
I like fighting them.
Yeah.
Mostly.
And I did like that. And, this is one area where there is a bit of consistency where at least the lower level Seraphan guards do have the same design as they did in Soul Reaver 2. So there's at least a little bit of consistency there. And it's also interesting here and you find out it's because the ruler of the Seraphan Lord is not actually human, but the Seraphan are oppressing humans and vampires alike. So you have a lot of humans that are helping the vampire resistance because they're like, well, having vampires around would be better than this. Like vampires were around forever also. And, it's just been recently that the Seraphan have been dicks about the way that, society is.
Pretty much. And did you get to see the scene where he gets his telekinesis power, where he meets another vampire that looks completely different?
Yes.
That is a weird scene too, like where he's sucking her blood and they don't know what sound to put in, so they just put in moaning instead.
Well, and also it was interesting because there's not really an animation to it, and then it happens again when you find the architect of the device in the internal prison, and he says, you need to take my blood because it'll destroy the mass. And we'll talk about the mass in a second. But so Kain says, okay, I'll release you from your prison and it'll also help me. And then the next thing you see is just Kain crouched over him. There's no sound effect. There's no animation of him doing it. And it's you could have at least just had him strike him down and then do the regular blood animation. It's just really weird. There's a lot of stuff like that in cutscenes where it feels like they ran out of time and they were just well, we'll just fudge it.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And I don't know if you saw the scene, but as the game progresses, you're trying to get to where the Hylian city is and get into their headquarters. And there's a part where to get the big master plan, if you get loaded onto a boat and then the level ends, the next level starts back up, the boat is coming crashing into the city and everybody's dead on the boat. And one guy I was watching called it, he said a Jurassic Park moment. And I was like, you're right. It's kind of that's what it reminded me of too. Everyone on the boat's dead, the cage is open, and then Kain just pops out and starts causing havoc.
Yeah. That's cool. But the ending of the level when you get on the boat is also similarly janky where it just stops. You get into this crate that you're loading on. You have a crane loading it onto the ship to get you to the Hilden city, but then it just stops, right? They couldn't even do the animation to have it lower onto this ship. It's
yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, really? You guys are that cheap?
Yeah. I don't know if it was cheap so much as just time. They did not have time,
which is too bad. Like you said before, this game really could have used a few more months.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things I do like it as the game progresses and you're trying to destroy this device or whatever. You did meet, I know we kind of mentioned him earlier, the first vampire who's in the Soul Reaver 2 game. I thought that was cool when you find him.
Right.
I can't remember his name. Janos
Audrin. He's referenced in the first Blood Omen, and then you actually meet him in Soul Reaver 2, which is cool. But the cool thing in here is that when you don't know it's him when you first see him because he's this monstrous beast that's chained to this machine that the Seraphan are planning to use to eradicate vampires and humans. Because basically what the Seraphan Lord wants to do is just eliminate the life on wherever whatever planet Nosgoth is. I think Nosgoth is the name of the land. I don't think it's necessarily the name of the planet.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But in order to bring his people back from this banished realm and then have them just take over the planet. And so they've had this beast chained up to this device. It's they're using him to power it. And then once you and so it's this weird multi-tiered process where he's fueling it, and then it's this big device, but the thing that is part of the device is called the mass, and they want to use the mass in order to, basically they want to make a network to use the mass's energy to flow out and then kill everything, which, Mike, would that be the Mass Effect?
I mean, it was trying to kill everybody in that game too, though. The Reapers were.
Yeah.
Right. I'll take it.
But no, so once you destroy the mask, you go back to this chained up beast, and then you find out, oh, it was Janos Audrin. It's just because of his life force being drained over so many years, he was like de-evolving, and so then he comes back to his celestial looking form and kind of clues you in on what's going on and tells you like who the Hilden actually are, and that stuff is really cool.
It definitely is one of the cooler moments of the game.
Yeah.
I forgotten, like it was really cool to see him. I mean, I just remember him in Soul Reaver 2, and I remember in Blood Omen 1, Heart of Darkness. I heard that all the time. That fucking ability. I use that item so much in that game.
Oh, you have to, yeah.
But I thought it was cool to kind of bring ties in, that they try to tie the series in, even though this game feels like such a black sheep of the family.
Definitely, yeah. And after what you said about it actually not originating as a Kain game, that makes so much sense now. But even so, like if they had spent, even just more like even some time, like it would have been cool to see Amy Hennig even as just like a producer on the game, just to know that she was involved in some way to kind of keep everything cohesive, and
keep the
that's
story.
not there, and it suffers for it.
I think it's just 2002 gaming where they didn't really care as much, because they would have made more money off this game if they just would have helped it connect. But at the same time, I think maybe they knew the series was coming to an end for them. They were getting tired of doing it.
Well, no. I mean, I don't think that's the case, because I think they were realizing, oh, this franchise is actually getting popular, so let's make more games.
Then why kill it the following year?
I don't think they killed it. I think what happened was Defiance didn't sell well, and then you have Amy Hennig leave. So then you have like one of the chief people like involved in the series like gone. And then, like, I'm trying to remember what happened to Crystal Dynamics immediately after Defiance, because eventually they get bought by Square, but that's years later. So I don't remember what they worked on like right after. They might have. Oh no, I know what it was. They started working on Tomb Raider. So once we got, because at the end of the PlayStation 2 era, that's when they do Tomb Raider anniversary.
Tomb Raider Legend, and then
Tomb Raider Legend, Tomb Raider Anniversary, and then Underworld. So they were the stewards of the Tomb. Well, I mean, I guess they're still stewards of the Tomb Raider franchise, but that's kind of where they ended up putting in their effort. And I don't know if that was like IDOS saying we're going to focus on Tomb Raider again, or if it was, I honestly think it was that the Defiance didn't sell nearly as well as they were expecting it to. And they also, I'm sure, when you look at that game, when you play it, Mike, you'll be like, oh, this is a much more expensive production.
I'm very excited to play it. That's one reason why this game was kind of quickly compared to how long, it wasn't that long we played Soul Reaver 2, was because I want to get to Defiance.
Yes.
So it's one of that's all it was. I wasn't comfortable us doing Defiance if we didn't play this game to get there.
Oh yeah, as much as I was dreading like revisiting this one, I'm glad that I did, because it's nice to know, to remember. And then, it's so weird because I have this weird brain thing where I remember video game stuff very well to the detriment of everything else in my life. I couldn't remember anything about Blood Omen 2 besides like a couple of the characters, and I remember liking the combat, and I remembered that the last boss like fight glitched on me in a way that I thought I was going to have to not finish it. I ended up being able to finish it after I like a few attempts, but that's all I remembered. Like even like going through these levels, I was like, I have no memory of this place.
It's just, I can see that. It's kind of forgettable. I mean, I did like the last, like the Highland City where everything is kind of like science fiction futuristic in a sense. Like I did enjoy that. Like after you've been playing all industrial type world, and now you're in complete just science fiction like spaceship, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I didn't like the enemies. They take a lot of hits and they look like, but it was still, it was fun. I was having fun near the end of this game, even though I just couldn't wait for the game then.
Yeah, and as we've said, there's a lot of good ideas here that just needed to be fleshed out more, and I do think that like the level design needs like a complete rework from the ground up. But
and this might amuse you. You can fit the entire story of this game in 1 hour and 37 minutes. By the way. Yeah,
I saw that.
I'm watching it as we're talking, and I'm just going to kick through it, and it's like, so everything else I did was just filler.
Yeah, and I mean
gameplay, yes, but
yeah, I mean that's video games, right? Like you can kind of boil a lot of games down to, if you just take the story bits, like it's going to be, well, I mean, obviously games are much longer now, so they're going to be much longer, but especially it's
kind of funny to me that it just, I mean, I know I'm kind of being, mean to the game, but it's just kind of like, now I'm thinking about it, just like, it's so, because I'm used to RPGs where every little thing can have story beats, but in this game, it's a lot of just get here to keep playing.
Right. Yeah, and there is some really good incidental dialogue if you stop and listen to the NPCs that are milling about. That stuff is pretty entertaining. They give you a little bit more context for the world and stuff like that. But it also has nothing that helps you in terms of gameplay. It's really just flavor text.
I listened a few times. I wouldn't listen long because after a couple seconds I'm like, okay, time to kill you. I need your blood.
Right.
So that was an issue for me. I just kept killing everybody very quickly.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about the final fight though a little bit when you finally get to the Seraphan Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I should mention that this game, every boss fight has 3 phases for some reason. They all do. They all have different things that they happen in each phase. And this fight, I didn't enjoy it at first because I kept screwing up where you have to use your telekinesis ability, which is really so far since you had it, all you use it for is puzzle solving, where you turn a switch. Right. And now you have to hit him with it, which you had no idea you were supposed to do that. Then you have to jump on him in order to get past the first phase. And I had a really hard time with this first phase.
Yeah.
I did not like
it. It's a really cool, use of the abilities. And it would have been cooler if they had already trained you that, you can use your telekinesis on enemies, right?
I never used to be. I didn't know you could until this fight.
Yeah. Also, I think you're going to get to it, but I totally forgot that you can grab enemies.
Oh, yeah. I barely ever use it. I forgot it was in this game. It is one of the other combat things, but I didn't like it because it's slow. Well, to grab, so it's going to be slow, but I hated it.
And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but because I just play this on a Let's Play, but isn't that how you have to beat him in the last phase, is grab him and stab him in the stomach?
No, you're supposed to. I don't know. I never got to the last phase.
Oh, okay. It glitched out on you too.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was just me, but it's so I got excited. I finished the second phase. There's a cutscene that starts, and all of a sudden the game goes. I'm like, oh no. So I close my emulator. I try again. Okay. I try again. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna look online. So I Google it. Oh, do this. I do this. Still nothing. Just would not progress. And I'm like, well, fuck this game.
Yeah.
But you get the Soul Reaver in the final fight. I thought that was kind of they couldn't give it to you at any point earlier. You don't get it to the very final moments of the game.
I mean, I think that's fine because this game isn't about the Soul Reaver, but it's still such a legendary weapon in the series.
You've seen Blood Omen 1 near the second half of the game or near the end, right?
And it's very close to the end.
It's been a long time.
And that's the thing, though, is that when you get the Soul Reaver for this final section, it doesn't feel different than any other weapon.
Is it at least more power? I'm assuming it probably doesn't, because there's a cheat code you can do in this game to get the Soul Reaver when you start a new game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like just from watching the Let's Play, you're still having to block his attacks, and then when you counter, you're just doing the same 3-hit combo, and because when you got the Soul Reaver in Blood Omen, you were turning enemies into giblets, right? You can kill the final boss in Blood Omen 1 with the Soul Reaver in 3 hits because it is the Soul Reaver, and that it just doesn't feel like that when you finally wrest it from the Seraphan Lord's fingers. And that's I was watching that, I was like, that's a bummer.
I just know that it's just the only thing special about that I'm aware of that is unbreakable for one thing, and it's probably more powerful than other weapons are in this game.
Yeah, but even the more powerful weapons are marginally so. It's oh, okay, I was able to slash this guy 2 fewer times with this batleth from the bigger Seraphan guards. Okay, I guess that's more powerful.
I'm sure that's all it is too with this. And I'd wanted to try it, but I didn't. Because originally I was going to put it in the code before I even started this game, just so I was more powerful. But I'm like, no, I should try the game the way it is so I can talk about it better. But then I'm like, yeah, I should have just used damn code.
Right.
I would have enjoyed it more. Like I said before, I didn't mind the weapon breaking because you're constantly getting new weapons. And you kill an enemy with a weapon, a couple enemies, not like Breath of the Wild where I tried to kill one enemy and broke my weapon 3 times. So,
Exactly. Yeah. I would go large stretches with the same weapons. Okay, this is fine. And when you're fighting tougher enemies, you can definitely tell because your weapons break faster. But it depends on the weapon you're using. Also, if you're using a regular sword against the batleth using Seraphan guards, that sword's going to break real quick. But if you have the same weapon that the Seraphan guard was using on you on something else, that thing is very sturdy and it'll last you a lot of fights. So, I don't mind weapon degradation if the weapons feel sturdy. But that's my big problem with Breath of the Wild. It's also my huge problem with Silent Hill Downpour, where you have a fucking fire axe that you need to use to chop down a door, which is what fire axes are designed for, and it breaks while you're chopping down the door. Like that doesn't work for me.
And that is kind of shitty. I've never played Downpour yet. I have played Origins, which I really, really like.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to play someday. Downpour will probably be on the show. Probably not as soon because my co-host is not into horror anymore, like my other co-hosts were. So
okay, well, I'm not helping you on Downpour. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll know who not to ask them when we get there someday. Someday maybe. I still want to finish up the Sound Hill series, but
I'll play some Homecoming again. I like Homecoming, but this is also very funny to any Nerds Without Pants listeners because we recently had a big beef on Silent Hill Homecoming versus Silent Hill Downpour in our video game cage match section, and it's still a thing. Like we didn't actually squash that beef.
I never got around to those yet. I really want to because they seem interesting to me.
Yeah.
I replayed Silent Hill 2 not too long ago. Ooh, time was not friendly to that game.
I mean, well, again, like context is everything, right? But gameplay, it certainly doesn't hold up. But like imagery and story and all that, it's like, okay, yeah, like you can like that game. You know, you can write papers on that game. Like, yeah, it's amazing. I actually, my very first date ever, I got deep into the weeds on the symbolism of Silent Hill. It's because she brought it up. Like, you know, video games obviously came up, and then she had played Silent Hill, and we were talking about, and we got into this pretty fun, deep conversation about the deeper meanings of Silent Hill, and that was actually pretty fun. It was. I was not being a weird gamer dude on this date. Let me clarify that.
That is pretty funny though. All right, and then before we go on to questions, we should mention this amazing detailed ending. So he gets the Soul Reaver, he stabs the Seraphon Lord, everything blows up, and he walks away. The end.
I mean, that's not consistent things because that's literally the ending of Blood Omen 1. Like,
yeah, but Blood Omen 1 had a lot of leading up to it. This one was kind of like, oh, it's over.
Yeah, but it ends in a way where I'm like, okay, I actually want to see him conquer Nosgoth now. Like, I want to play that. Like, that's what I said. Like, I would play Blood Omen 3 today. You know, if they made that, like, I would do that. And again, like, I think I've mentioned this in previous Kain episodes, but if listeners want to look up the footage of that unreleased Legacy of Kain game that they were working on, which basically looks like Legacy of Kain meets Hitman, that game looks all right. Like,
Son, I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, I think so. Not Nosgoth, because Nosgoth is that weird multiplayer one. But yeah, that gameplay looks real damn good. Now, the setting for it I was not pleased with because it was like set like far beyond the era of Kain or Raziel to the point that they're not even like factored into the story. And it's like, well, that's the wrong way to go. But the gameplay itself looked really good.
Yeah, I'm watching the video right now. And funny that you mentioned it. Actually, the first question we had was from the Overblood group, Will Irize. He said, Legacy of Kain is such good shit. The writing and voice acting is insanely good. There was a leak not too long ago from a canceled sequel, and he posted the link to what I'm watching right now.
Yeah.
So I didn't mention that.
I will say just, not to date this episode too much, but we are like the Avengers game by Crystal Dynamics has just recently come out to mediocre reviews, both from critics and players. And I'm terrified that Square is going to decide that the game didn't perform to their lofty expectations and then close down Crystal Dynamics instead of putting them on the Legacy of Kain sequel that they should be working on.
Oh, they're not going to work on a sequel anyway.
They should, but I mean, that's what they should be doing, right? Like, it's just that their masters are insane. Like Square Enix's projections for game sales are insane. I just found out that Final Fantasy VII Remake underperformed.
Didn't that sell really good?
It sold 5 million copies.
That's really good.
Which admittedly is probably less than I would have thought it would have sold, but that's still, in 2020, those are really fucking good numbers. And Square is like, they're actually upset that it didn't sell well.
We're not going to get a part 2, are we?
Well, we are. But the rumor is now is that's it. Like, it's just going to be 2 parts, and so they're going to cram the rest of Final Fantasy VII into one other game, which, I mean, I maintained that the remake should have just been the whole game to begin with. But when you extrapolate what did in the remake, and then you're going to then cram the rest of the story into a sequel, okay. All right, Square, whatever.
That's not going to work well. I hope they don't do that because there's a lot to that game. Yeah. All right, I'm going to read actually got a lot more memories and comments than I expected, so I'm going to try to read a decent amount of these, and it'll give us some stuff that we hadn't brought up. But the first one's from the Laser Time group from Greg Moore, sort of the Phantom Menace of the Legacy of Kain series. It is that it jumped back in the timeline, but essentially contributed nothing of consequence to the overall canon. I haven't played it since the early 2000s, but as I recall, it was entirely a side story, so only Blood Omen 2 in the sense that it starred Kain and chronologically followed the events of Blood Omen 1.
Hey, man. The pod race was pretty cool.
Hey, I love Phantom Menace. I will defend Phantom Menace as a good movie. Now, Attack of the Clones is shit, but Phantom Menace is good.
I actually enjoy the prequels, but yeah, Attack of the Clones is definitely the weakest. There are definitely parts of Phantom Menace that I really love, including the political shit. Like I actually really dig that stuff. But he's not wrong about Blood Omen 2. Other than towards the end of the game tying in Janos Aldrin into it and kind of the origin of the vampire race into this conflict. That's really it. And then apparently, when they did Defiance, they asked Amy Hennig about Blood Omen 2, and she literally does a hand wave dismissal of the story of Blood Omen 2, which is, I think, disappointing because I think there is stuff there that should be part of the overall canon. But she was like, it's time stuff, alternate realities and whatnot.
Yeah, it's too bad that there. And here's one from Brandon Bailey. Also, Vorador shows up back in the game, and I'm pretty sure it's never once explained how he came back from being, decapitated. But I think that was kind of what you brought up, too, where you said it, he reversed time, so it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I'm not completely 100% on that, because the last section of, Blood Omen 2 gets so weird with the timeline, but I want to say that when you see Vorador decapitated, that is in a version of the future when... that you see, but then when you go back in time, or maybe you create that. Maybe you cause that because you go back and kill the king, and then that's how... I don't remember.
It's a lot of timey-wimey stuff, though.
It is a lot of timey-wimey stuff, for sure.
I read a little bit of this in preparation for the episode, but I didn't go in detail. I didn't go back and listen to our episodes or anything, of course. I didn't, because it's not what they were really here for. But yeah, it's maybe listen to our Blood Omen. Maybe we explained episode 19. I don't know.
Yeah. I also don't recall. I think you're right about Soul Reaver 2, where when you do see Vorador, it's you see him before the events of Blood Omen.
Oh, that's for sure, because I was reading on the Wikipedia for Soul Reaver for Legacy of Kain series, and it was talking about how because Soul Reaver 2, you're going through time, different eras because of Mobius, which is cool. And this one from Sam Neill. Somehow I only played the Soul Reaver games and not the Blood Omens. I'm kind of surprised this franchise died out. Me too.
I'm surprised about that. And I do, as much as I love the first Blood Omen game, neither of these games have aged well, and so it is very difficult to go back to them. If anything, the first game, just because of the insane load times.
I had such a hard time with that first game.
Yeah.
I liked it, but...
I enjoy it as the dark Legend of Zelda that it was trying to be. I mean, that's really what it was going for.
Well, here's an interesting comment from Emmanuel Colvin. Blood Omen 2 would be entirely non-canon if not for Defiance tying it to intricately to the overall plot and to the Fall of the Pillars. I wonder whose idea was that to take something conceived as an alternate universe and what if and make it not just relevant but a foundation stone for the rest of the series.
That's interesting, because that contradicts what I heard from Amy Hennig. But I in all fairness, I have not finished Legacy of Kain Defiance, which is one of the reasons I'm really excited to revisit it for this podcast, because it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I was really loving that game, but it came out at a time where I think something else must have come out, like some RPG that I was looking forward to, and so I put it down, and then I picked it back up and could not remember where I was, because that is one of those games where if you put it down midstream and you don't know exactly what you were doing, you're not going to know where to go next, because the game, it literally melds the gameplay of Raziel and Kain into, alternating chapters. So on the Kain side, it's an action game like Devil May Cry. And then on the Raziel side, it's all of the puzzle solving and reality shifting and all of that stuff. And I was on a Raziel chapter and I was like, I don't know what I need to do next. And I'm really far into this level.
Okay, I definitely... I'm looking forward to playing it too here in the future. And another one I want to read from Zach Adams. I beat the first 3 Kain games, but got 2 hours into this and immediately fired it out of my brain. Did it deserve that, or was it just being a dumb elitist? It deserved it.
Yeah, no, you made the right call. And I am definitely a person who, like I said, I'm very much about looking at games in context and saying well, you can't, I mean, you can judge it by today's standards, but that's just going to make almost everything look bad. But even by 2002 standards, and especially compared to the game that came out just months before it in the same series, it's just an inferior product from top to bottom.
Yeah. And last one from this group, but I still have a lot of others. From
Excellent.
Adam Bradbury. My brother and I would quote these games all the time. We were told to be on the lookout for a vampire.
Hey, Adam Bradbury. He's a listener of Nurse Without Pants. What's going on, Adam?
Okay, so that's what that's cool.
Yeah.
He messaged me a few times on the Facebook page and was talking and got me to listen to Metal Gear Mondays, which I actually was listening to a bunch recently.
Yeah. He recommended that to me too. He's a good dude, and no,
cool.
he's right. Like I get really into being Kain. He's just such a cool character, and like I said at the top of the show, like, and I can't overstate it enough that Simon Templeman is like the driving force of Blood Omen 2. It's like if you don't have him, you've got nothing.
Wait, he actually is on the Cameo as of this recording. He's on the Cameo website where you can get him to do a cameo video for you for like $35. I'll go to charity. I was looking it up earlier for reasons.
Oh God! Like a friend of mine actually got me a cameo earlier in the pandemic because it's been very hard on me, and he got one for me from Rhonda Shear from USA Up All Night, which is awesome because I love B movies and I love boobs. But getting Kain as a cameo, that oh man,
it's
awesome.
We'll talk. I will talk after the show. I have something to say to you after the show. All right, and this is from the Legacy of Kain fans. You guys were super awesome. I got over 45 comments. I'm not reading all 45 from this group. I have one other group to read because that's just too many. But I'm going to read some of these. But I'm just thank you guys for being such a cool fan base and because I didn't think anyone was going to comment about this game. I'm like, I'm not getting nobody because people don't like this game.
No, but the Kain fan base is rabid, like to the point where if I tweet anything that mentions Legacy of Kain or Soul Reaver, like there are accounts that just pick it up because there are like Twitter accounts that are just scouring Twitter for anybody talking about these games because, you know, it especially because like I think a lot of us fans of the series are like, is this the year? Like, is this when we get a teaser for the next game? Is this the year?
I'm watching this Dead Sun thing since we've been talking, and this looks awesome. Like, I would have loved to play this, and I'm really bummed I can't.
Yeah.
It reminds me like Arkham Asylum and other stuff kind of put together, like Spider-Man. It just looks really cool.
Yeah. And with a heavy emphasis on stealth, which, like I was saying earlier in this episode, I think that for this particular game, that's really what it should have focused on, is trying to disguise your vampirism and skulk in the shadows and everything.
Because it does show very few times in Blood Omen 2 where as he's talking to Pedestrian, he looks like a human. He has a disguise on. He doesn't look like a vampire.
Yeah, but especially at the very beginning of the game when he's just out there with his bare white chest and his black claws. It's like,
know, but...
No, but like people talk to him like he's like a regular dude, and it's like, oh, okay. And you know, because he did have a spell in the first game that allowed him to masquerade as a human, and I don't know if I want to say there was a line here that implicates that he still has that ability, and so maybe he's using that, but they just didn't show it visually.
There is something. There is a very small scene at some point where you see him looking like a hook-nosed merchant or something, talking to somebody for like a brief second.
Yeah, so I guess that's it. So, you know, and I guess that, you know, the economy of they couldn't actually show him shifting. Well, and you wouldn't want to be in that form for most of the game anyway, so that kind of makes sense. But I would have liked them to be a little bit more explicit about what was going on, because it was kind of funny to see people treating him like a regular dude.
And that Dead Sun also looks like Assassin's Creed, where he's talking to someone else in like a regular outfit. It looks, man, I'm so upset we never got that.
Yeah.
I for a guy who never really played a Legacy of Kain series until episode 19 of this show, I'm like, I'm really upset now because I really want to play Dead Sun.
Yeah.
And I can't because it doesn't exist. All right. And a couple from here I'm going to read from Marvin Blow. I love the combat system of this game.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. I mean, again, it needs more, but the basics there are really fun. They're really good. And again, like I really like the active blocking. Like I like the way that it feels. And when the audio is working correctly, it's even better because it does this kind of like escalating chime every time that you successfully block an attack. But that only happened like maybe 10% of the time.
I like this one. From Brandy Hansen. It was very what the fuck whenever the bosses would run away / around like a damn valley girl in heels. My roommate at the time and I mocked that bit of the game endlessly.
Yeah, why are you always having to chase the bosses? They're like, oh, I can defeat you easily, Kain. Let me run away.
All right, here's an interesting one from Julian Henry. I enjoyed it. In fact, gameplay-wise, it's my favorite of the 5. It has some issues, especially with the sound glitching, but it was still fun to play. It is, however, my least favorite from the series in terms of story and captivation. I also think it's weird that they changed Vorador's face.
It's very weird that they changed Vorador's face.
Yeah, I don't get it. Let's see. This one from Samuel Snyder. I just remember playing the first time and wondering about the whole timeline split thing and confusing myself, but afterward did really enjoy it at its core. It's not an unworthy sequel. Now, here's a good one. From Preparium Barisha, it's the best in the series gameplay-wise, and it's the most focused story-wise. It's straightforward and very fun. It doesn't take itself as seriously as the rest of the series. It's not the black sheep. It's the cool one. I did call this game the black sheep in this group.
Interesting. Again,
I'm glad someone really... I mean, there actually are a lot of people who really, really love this game, and I'm just like, I'm happy you did.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that, but you can list almost any game and you're going to find some people who are very passionate about it, and that's fine. Again, this might just be memory, but I just remember feeling that the gameplay in Defiance was amazing, and I could be wrong. Like, we'll get there next year, but that's an interesting take, saying that's the best gameplay of the series.
Yeah. It's because it's more combat. At least out of the 4 that we played so far for the show, it's much more combat heavy than Soul Reaver was. So I can kind of see that, and I didn't really enjoy Soul Reaver combat, if I remember correctly. And Blood Omen 1, I didn't enjoy that much, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, but in Defiance, Kain gets to do air juggles, Mike.
I'm very excited to play Defiance. We almost skipped this to play Defiance, but I thought that we needed to. Otherwise, we never would have went back.
Right.
All right, this one from Michael Bly. I will say that I've played every Legacy of Kain game several times, more than 20 times. I've only played through that one twice because of the combat systems and simple puzzles. Okay.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh, this we didn't talk about, so this is a good one. From Virgilio Bautista. I enjoyed the hell out of this for the fact that I could grab enemies by the throat and cut their heads off, which you can do. It kills them.
Oh man, yeah. Again, I forgot about the grab mechanic, so I never got to see that. I'm bummed.
I did it a couple times by accident when I hit the wrong buttons, or I would be trying to throw, because you can throw people off into the water, you can throw them into places, but then you don't get their blood.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it is an instant kill when you do that.
Man, okay, like I wish that had been needed for some of the enemies, because they teach it to you in the tutorial, but then I quickly forgot about it because I was like, why would I ever use this? This feels like shit. It's very
slow.
Yeah.
You have to time it right where you can grab them because it's slower than him hitting, and you don't have large windows in between when they attack you from when you can attack them next.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I think if the enemies had better tells. Oh, I forgot to tell you about one of the major glitches that I encountered, where partway through the canyon level, which is the last level that I got to, enemies just stopped attacking me.
What?
They would come to me and they would just move around me and not do anything. And so you would think, oh, that must have made the game a lot easier. Oh, no. Because, the game is kind of built around you blocking and then,
they open up after they attack.
Right. So if they're not attacking, I mean, you can still get a few hits in just by slashing at them, but it's a much slower affair because they're typically going to block most of the stuff that you're putting out there. And also, since I wasn't blocking, I wasn't charging up my Fury and Berserk moves. So I also couldn't one-shot some of the enemies here and there, and that sucked.
Oh, that is, because you need that I can see what you mean then. Because at first I was like, oh, that's not a bad thing, but yeah, they don't ever open up, or that would make it very annoying.
Yeah.
Because that combo is all of the main way you do damage to them.
Right, and also it took away the biggest selling point of the game, which was the actual combat.
And this one from Daniel Monroe. I liked it. I just love all the games in the series. I would love a remake. Could you imagine this in an open world? That would be cool. I
like the level design, but I would love to see a remake of this game. Like I said, if you change the control scheme, add some depth to the combat, change up the level design completely, you've got a banger of a game.
Oh, this is something we haven't mentioned. This will be a good one to read from Rue Caprahina, and I apologize any name I butchered, but that's what I do here. I've only beaten it once 15 years ago. I was immediately dismayed by the bimbo vampire girl and the tank controls, and I never cared too much for the Highland. Also, Beast Jano sucks. However, I installed it last weekend and want to finish it again this year. Well, hey, maybe you'll listen to the podcast when you do.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Uma, who was it's funny, I love to watch really bad boob physics, and it's not in the regular game, but in the first cutscene with her when she wakes up Kain, I think they were trying to replicate her breathing, but it just looks like her boobs are pulsating. It is the straight, the only other animation that is worse is there's a character in Mortal Kombat Deception where her tits do a full 360-degree rotation as she moves.
What the fuck?
It's awful, and that stuff always amuses me. And this character Uma actually looks like a Mortal Kombat reject, Actually, a lot of the vampires in this game look like Mortal Kombat rejects.
You're not wrong. They look like stuff from Mortal Kombat 4.
Yeah.
All right, and this one from Frank C. Could it have been better? Definitely, but it's still badass. Kain is brutal. You're not wrong. Like that part with Uma where she betrays you, and he's like, "You can save me," and he's like, "You're dead." He just walks away and just leaves her to die because she betrayed. Because she didn't even betray him that when she took a thing off his chest or something to go fight the Seraphim Lord herself. I don't remember exactly, but
yeah, there's a weird part of the story there. Because I mean, I saw her betraying Kain from like the jump, but I just assumed that she was going to be working for the Seraphim Lord.
Yeah, same.
And so after you kill her and you're talking to the Seraphim Lord at the end, like basically Kain says, like, accuses the Seraphim Lord of like having Uma as his spy, and he's like, I don't have a spy named Uma, implying that Kain thought that she was working for him the whole time, but that's not what she says. Like, she literally says, I'm going to kill him instead of you because I don't trust you. But even when she betrays him, it's also a weird thing where she says, like, why would you let the vampires live? And it's like, because he is a vampire and he's been working to have vampires rule? Like none of that stuff works for me. But I do love the fact that like because she betrayed him, everyone betray him. That's a Room reference, folks. That he kills her outright when he could save her because, you know, he's like, you should have been on my side and you weren't, so now you die. That is vintage Kain.
I didn't like her, but I did like that part. And last thing I'm going to read from this group is from Nicholas Mills. Second game I played in the series after Soul Reaver. Probably my favorite of the series. Everything is so different from the rest. It's mind-blowing, confusing, and spectacular at the same time. The atmosphere is amazing. The music is some of the best, if not the best. Next to Blood Omen 1. Every level is so distant from the next. It always feels fresh and new. Top-notch sound design. Favorite level is the canyon. So,
ooh, oh man.
I know, I don't understand either, but
that, you know, that's awesome that you love it, but I the canyons is what broke me, and then
I like the canyons.
I actually like the sound. Like I was actually going to say is that, like, you know, there's little hints of the soundtrack of the series in there, but by and large, like it, and maybe it was just because of the sound glitches, but I didn't get a lot of that in my playthrough, and I was very disappointed. I was like, this doesn't even sound like the Legacy of Kain series.
Oh, here's a good one from We Want a New Legacy of Kain group from Jordan Mulatto. He said, spoiler alert, question on the game, is Vorador alive because this is a new timeline created when Kain saves Raziel at the end of Soul Reaver 2? And somebody else answered him and said, yep, we just never see his restoration take place in Defiant due to time constraint.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense to me. Okay, all right, yeah.
That's why he's alive, because I guess it'll be, because I forgot that Soul Reaver 2 kind of takes place throughout time as Raziel is doing things, and so, but I don't remember a whole lot about the series, unfortunately.
I mean, you definitely, as a story writer, you it's easy to write yourself into problems with time travel. See Heroes Season 2. But, you know, but the other thing, too, is that you can just explain stuff away. Most of the last few seasons of Doctor Who.
And here's an interesting, this one from Etrigal Ecole is the weakest game in the series, but that's not that bad, as all the rest of the games in the series are masterpieces. I know you can agree with that. Or most of them.
I wouldn't say masterpieces as far as gameplay goes, but as far as story and world building and stuff like that, yeah. I mean, you know, this is one of my favorite worlds in video games, and you know, there's a reason why I've been fiending for a new Legacy of Kain game forever, as I think a lot of the people in this group are.
Yeah, oh yeah, I kind of, like, now that I watched that Dead Sun, I really want to play Dead Sun.
Yeah.
And I can't. From Joshua Kelly, personally, I had no problem with it outside of being a bit buggy, a few missing story pieces in it, like Vorador's revival, but otherwise I think it explains exactly why Nosgoth becomes the wasteland it does in Soul Reaver. I think that's a cool idea, it does make sense, because, I mean, when you see Nosgoth in Soul Reaver, it's completely just, the world is screwed up.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. And again, I want to play that part of it where you get to see, like, not only Kain conquer Nosgoth, but then maybe there's a time skip where you get to see how his rule has impacted Nosgoth. Although there are some story threads in Soul Reaver 2 that indicate that it's not necessarily because Kain destroyed the Pillar of Balance, that there's actually deeper machinations at work. And
this one from Rai Shadan said, I have to say it, I liked it better than Soul Reaver 2. I did too, because I couldn't play Soul Reaver 2, so. Man, I'm still bummed that I had to watch that entire game in YouTube videos because I could not get it to run on anything. Steam, PS2, nothing, just would not run.
Yeah, that's rough.
I could have bought a real copy and bought a real PS2, but that was not happening. So
yeah, I mean, I haven't said it on the show, but I'm a very big proponent of playing games on original hardware with original software whenever possible. Because even when you get like remasters that come out on like other systems later on down the road, you almost always lose something in the translation. There's just something that can't be recreated when you bring it to other platforms. But that's not in everybody's wheelhouse. Like, I mean, I'm super anti-emulation, but that's more from just coming from a former game retailer and also someone who played around with the idea of making games for a while. But
I love emulation, especially for older stuff. But my whole thing is I'll try to buy it if I can buy it like on Steam or somewhere else. I will buy it and I'll emulate it just because I want save state.
Right, and I'm starting to come around on the idea of wanting to emulate a version of a game that you own simply because maybe you want to save on the wear and tear on the hardware, or if you want to like do stuff like modify it or like you said, like use save states, like that stuff. I'm a little less strict on.
I emulated Eternal Darkness because either A, have that game in my collection, I don't know where, or B, I would have to pay $80 or no, $150 I think it was to buy it off eBay to some loser who still has a copy of it because Nintendo won't re-release it. I'm emulating it.
I have a new copy of it.
It's a good game. It's just that I had a story that's on there that why I don't, either I do have it or I don't have it, but it's because of one moment where I looked at it and I'm like, I should buy this.
Yeah.
But I emulate a lot, but that's a big reason why, is I just don't. I mean, but I will buy, like I bought Super Mario 3 5 or 6 times at this point on different things. I have no problem emulating that. I'm like,
right, Nintendo's gotten your money many times over on that one, yeah.
2 times the Wii Virtual Console, which I'll never see again, but hey. And this one, I'm going to only read a few more. From Dan McCoulis. My favorite level was the internal prison. Turn the lights off at night and play this level. It's awesome. Yeah. It was a good level.
It's a really cool level.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it was a Chachan Forever Man level, but it was a cool level.
Yeah.
This one from Christopher Carter. Fuck that game. I just love that. That was his one comment. I did feel that way at times. Like I don't hate this game, but I did like that. And this one from Efren Alvarez. This is my beloved favored one. See, like a lot of people really like this game.
Hey man, there's people who love Final Fantasy II also. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that that's an unpopular opinion.
And last one I'm going to read for questions is from Agin. I can't even pronounce your name. Last name Winterowitz. I said that wrong too. A guilty pleasure of mine. Like, I'm glad to see that a lot of people are fans of this game. I'm glad to see this game brought joy to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think because the series is so short and it's so engaging, like when you start to get into the whole like world of Nosgoth and stuff like that, you want more. And so even if you've heard bad things about Blood Omen 2, you're gonna try it. And when you do, you'll probably be like, this isn't nearly as good, but it's still more, and I just want more. So at least I got a little bit more of this series that I love so much.
Yeah, if I played it in 2002, I wouldn't have minded all the levers. I wouldn't have minded all the stuff in this game. Like, I actually almost bought this game in 2003 or sometime, maybe 2004. I remember seeing it at the shelf and I had no idea. I actually might own this somewhere because the cover looked cool with a vampire. Mm-hmm. I might have bought it. I can't remember. I know I picked it up and thought about buying it because I had my first job when I was in high school, so I would just go every week, go to game or EB Games at the time and just pick up random PS2 games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm older, but I did when I got my first job, I would go every Friday to Game Fellas, which was our local store that I would end up working at for 8 years. I would just spend my paycheck on whatever was new that looked interesting. Like, that's how I ended up with Nightmare Creatures, because I was like, because you could try out games at Game Fellas. So I tried it for a few minutes. I was like, yeah, okay, ring it up. And that's how that's what I did for and I only worked that job for like a year and a half, and then I worked at Game Fellas. So then it was a matter of, I've got an employee discount, and I also beat games really quickly. So let me buy this game when it comes out on a Tuesday, beat it by Sunday, and then trade it in the following Tuesday for the next new game.
I used to go out to game stores a lot, like GameStop, and buy like new games, or not new, but like new games for me. But I'll be stuff under $10. But now that GameStop is kind of at its end, I don't go anymore, and because of COVID.
And I also like I'm sad for anybody who doesn't have like a mom and pop used video game store, because the quality of used games at GameStop is terrible.
They are not what they were, and I am sad to see that they are on their last leg.
Yeah. I'm not so, again, as a longtime retail guy, I'm not so sad about that because fuck GameStop because
I understand.
You know, but having fewer places to buy used video games is bad. And I was actually, Nerds Without Pants listeners know this, but my plan was actually to open a video game store in Colorado Springs, and then this fucking pandemic happened and was like, you want dreams? Fuck you.
At least you didn't do it right before COVID hit.
Yes, I am thankful of that.
That's still sad.
Because there have definitely been plenty of businesses here in Austin where, you know, they opened up right before this happened and now they're gone. And it's like, that just breaks my heart. So yeah, you're right. It could have been worse.
Because COVID has just been so terrible for things. And that's one of the things I feel so bad about is that if you open a business and you probably didn't survive what happened.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Austin has a lot of like very well-known music venues and restaurants that are local here, and we've lost a bunch of them in the last 6 months. That places that have been around for 40, 50 years, and it's just heartbreaking.
It's crazy what this pandemic did to the world.
Yeah.
Hey, we don't look like Nosgoth yet, and we don't have glyph technology, so there's that, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, maybe this is how we get to Nosgoth. That like someone broke the pillar of balance somewhere on Earth, and we just don't know who.
That was in 2016, I think, right? Isn't that when it got broken?
I think you're right. Yeah.
But all right, I think we should go to shelf or box now. That was actually the longest question section I've ever had on the show, by the way, just now.
No, that's great. I mean, thanks to everybody who submitted. I hope they get to listen to the show because
they'll see the plug. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the Kain community is one of the most rabid fan bases that I've seen. Oh, and I meant to mention this last time. It doesn't really fit into this, but there is a YouTube channel, and I don't remember the name of it, but just search for Soul Reaver alpha footage. And basically, this person was able to get their hands on the alpha build of the original Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver for PS1, which, as we talked about on that episode, there was a ton of stuff that was cut from that game for time constraints. And they go through and show you like a lot of the like areas that didn't make it into the game, animations that didn't make it into the game, story bits that were supposed to be there. It's super fascinating. If you're into the concept of like video game archaeology, like I am, where you like the search for the 13th Colossus in Shadow of the Colossus, like that whole thing, or boundary break stuff where you get to see like kind of how the sausage is made, where you see these unused rooms and stuff that are still in the game for some reason. It's a fascinating deep dive, and there's a ton of videos that handle everything from level design to combat to puzzles. It's really cool. Okay.
You have my attention. I might have to look that up because I for a series I could give a shit about, over 2 years ago. Now I'm very interested. So
yeah.
All right. And I think we should go down to shelf for box. And Julian, since you're our guest, why don't you go first?
Oh, this is going in the fucking box, Mike. I bought a copy for this podcast, and it's not that I'm angry that I bought a copy for the podcast, but there was a reason that I didn't already have it in my collection.
But now you own it.
But now I own it. Now I have them all.
I mean, if I see this at a flea market for $5, I would pick it up and throw it in the box, or actually it would go on a shelf just to have it.
Yeah, I paid a fair sight more than that, but in my defense, it came with two other games that are cool. It came with Legaia 2 and the Brave Fencer Musashi sequel for PS2, and all three of them look like brand new copies. So,
Musashi sequel will be coming on the show at some point. So
I've never played that one, so I'm interested to check it out.
I'll have to hit you up then when we get there.
Yeah,
Legaia 2 will not be because that is a long game.
The Legaia games are long, but they're
yeah, I've never played Legaia 2 very far, but I've seen it, and I remember it looking like a really good RPG, and I've always wanted to go back and play it someday.
Yeah.
I own it.
It has Julian Titus' recommendation to anyone who's listening and likes RPGs.
Legend of Legaia, that's a good game, but I don't know how it holds up in 2020 anymore.
Yeah, I think Legaia 2 probably holds up a little bit better. Gameplay is similar in both games, but obviously it looks way better on Legaia 2.
Yeah, because PS1 is rough to go back to sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go next. I was actually torn between putting this on the shelf or the box for a while because I did enjoy parts of the game. I was having a lot of fun, but it got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm ready to be done. And I was only in chapter 7 or 8, and the game just kept on going. I'm like, I understand, but I don't want to play you anymore. And so I finished it, but then it glitched out at the end of me. So then it really went, okay, fuck you, game. You're going in the box, and I don't want to play you again.
Yeah. And again, it's a bummer because there's not very many entries in the series, and it does give you just a little bit more of that sweet, sweet Legacy of Kain smack. But it's just not quite there, well, for me at least.
It's not there for it's there for a lot of people apparently. I was going to say,
yeah.
But it's not us.
It was cool to hear that.
It did make me happy to know that so many people really enjoyed it and were so have such good fond memories of this game. Because I maybe if I played it in 2000, or the early 2000s, I would like it a lot more. But 2020 Mike was just like, meh, this ain't fun for me.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun at point, but it wouldn't end, and I'm too busy. So it's going in the box, and I will not I won't recommend it to people.
I will recommend it to fans of the series. Like if you have played any of the other games and you really dug them and you want more and haven't played Blood Omen 2 because you've heard bad things, I would recommend it to those particular people. Because again, it does give you more. Just keep in mind that it is rough.
And even though Mike isn't here, I do have his shelf for box. As soon as I can find it.
I'm assuming it's box because it almost killed him.
It definitely boxed, but he typed it up. Now I can't find it. And I don't know why. I thought I saved it, but I did not. He did not. He was actually, even before he got sick, he's like, I'm not going to finish this game. He's like, and I was going to do PS2 cheats for him and send it so he could finish it. But then after he ended up in the hospital, I'm like, well, there's no point now. Okay, here's his thing. I didn't finish the game, obviously, but even had my body not been a living dumpster, I doubt I would have had the patience to get through this game. The combat is total garbage. What kind of all-powerful vampire is Kain if even every enemy can block all of his attacks anyway? Draining the blood of everyone you come across is fun for a while, but ultimately just slows down the game even more, puts it in the box. So there's his thing.
Yeah. I disagree with the combat, but he's not wrong. And I think you can explain away the weakness part just because Kain is weaker, but then also some of the Seraphan guards are using really powerful weapons as well. A lot of it kind of boils down to what weapon are you using.
I know he didn't like it when he got to the canyon and he fought the girls that jump around a lot. I know that irritated him.
I didn't mind them. I also liked their design because they kind of had this Red Sonja vibe that I was digging. Kind of really cool, sword and sorcery, Boris Vallejo type design. I love that stuff.
I also save after I would save state a lot, so it took away some of the issues I had. He wasn't, because I could just hit. Oh, you hit me? Okay, I'll just reload and keep hitting and fix it. It'll take away a lot of the problem. And I know he didn't play with save state because he tries to play more legit than I do, where I'm just like, I don't give a shit. I need to finish this game.
Yeah,
but that's just how I play games in general, especially old games. If I can emulate it, I'm going to emulate just for save states. Even when I play a new game, I'll play on the easiest difficulty I can just so I can blow through it and enjoy it without really spending a lot of time on it.
Yeah, that actually that bit me in the ass on an upcoming episode that I'll be on, but I know you haven't announced it yet, so I'll talk about it.
I haven't. I forgot. It took a second. I know what you're talking about. And since actually, now I'll introduce what we're talking about next week. We are actually going to be talking about. This is actually the other Mike's pick, but he's not here to introduce it, so I will. Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Genesis.
Ooh, nice. So
it's a good game. I just got done beating it yesterday, and I'm gonna go play it again soon. So we're gonna dig into that. Try and do more Castlevania because there's not enough on this in this show yet.
Yeah,
there's only one. Area of Sorrow.
I mean, you picked
one of the best,
my favorite one. It depends on what day of the week it is. It's either Aria of Sorrow or Dawn of Sorrow. You can flip a coin with me because I love them both.
Okay, I'll remember that when we do. Because we're talking about doing Dawn of Sorrow in the future. So
yeah.
I'll have to hit you up for that one. All right, and since I forgot to say this in the beginning of the show, Julian, why don't you introduce where people might know you from?
Yes, I host the Nerds Without Pants podcast. You can find us on most podcatchers, and I'm really happy with our most recent episode 185. It is a 4.5-hour monster, but that's because we had asked for the most epic music selections from our lovely listeners, and they did not disappoint.
4.5 hours?
Yeah, well, it was like a 3-hour podcast, but then there's like an hour and a half of fucking amazing video game music in there.
Man, that editing must have been a chore.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I'm also a madman when it comes to editing, so they're all a chore. But yes, we do these music episodes a few times every year because they are labor intensive, but it's always so worth it. And it's a really fantastic episode. And hopefully there's a lot of people from the Kain community listening to this. Check us out because it's a lot of fun. You can also interact with us on Twitter at NWPcast or me on Twitter at Julian_Titus. And we're a smaller podcast also. So if you tweet at us, we're going to reply because we're like, somebody tweeted at us.
And there will be a link in the show notes as always for your show. Yeah, I normally always have the guest do it in the beginning, but I just completely forgot thanks to Blood Omen 2, and just let's get into this game.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just happy to be able to talk about my show because I'm really proud of it, and especially this. If you don't listen to anything else, listen to episode 185.
Not on Stitcher.
No,
makes me sad because I have listened to the show a few times, but it's not on Stitcher, so I don't listen to it as much as I would normally.
Yeah, you can find us on Apple
Podcast Addict.
over like I use what's it not Overwatch. That's a video game. Overcast. That's the one that I use.
Okay, I don't know why I use Stitcher. I can't explain it. I, for some reason, downloaded Stitcher at one point in my life, and I just never stopped using it, and I don't know why.
I mean, it's a super popular app. I think part of the reason was that for up until just recently, we didn't have our own themes music. So I was just pulling whatever licensed, music fit the episode. And so that'll get you dinged. And then obviously, I don't know how they would handle an hour and a half of video game music in there. I don't know if that automatically gets flagged or whatever. We do have amazing original music now provided to us from Megan McDuffie, the composer of River City Girls. So nice. That was really she does amazing work, and I fucking love our theme song.
That's why I have no video game music ever in this, because I don't want to mess with the copyright issue, because I'm eventually going to put this on YouTube someday. I keep telling myself.
Yeah.
So I don't want to. I know YouTube is very happy to copyright stuff and kick you off.
Yeah, which is weird because YouTube is where I've found the all of the music that
it doesn't make sense, but yeah. It does YouTube. All right, and I also want to mention, if you enjoyed this episode, we have done the rest of the we've done a bunch of the series of Legacy Game, which I forgot to mention at the top of the show. Episode 19, Blood Omen. Episode 40, Soul Reaver. Episode 77, Soul Reaver 2. So if you need more Legacy of Kain, go check out those episodes. And you do. I mean, hey, they're more entertaining games than these, but in more story. So this one didn't have a lot of story, but it's an entertaining episode, I think. So definitely check those out. And we do games every week. We do mini games sometime. Well, mini episodes or shorter episodes. We talk about some of the shorter games. It couldn't fill a full episode like this one did. So check those out. We also do comics and movies. So we've been going through the MCU movies. So definitely check that out. At the time of this recording, you just got Iron Man 3, and you'll be getting next month 2 because it's all Spooktober right now. So definitely check out our other spooky stuff. And if you enjoy this episode, tell someone, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Let somebody know you enjoy games. My mom found it's a great way to help us do more with it, support the show and help us do more with the show. And also last thing I want to say is please give a shout out to our awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Bulby, aka Mike Stoney from ZP Bite the Bullet, Songs the Cool Kid Squad. Definitely check him out on his YouTube channel. You see a link in the show notes. And please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, where I'm constantly posting updates of what's going on with the show and images of upcoming episodes. So I think that's all I need to say. I want to thank Julian for taking time out to continue our travel through Nosgoth. We got one more left.
Yeah, always happy to be here.
And we will see everybody next time. Bye, everybody.
Wash your goddamn hands. Goodbye.
Yeah.